Hello, this is Dr. Martina, your online sex therapist and sex educator. If your partner asks you to play a certain role in a fantasy that he has, and you actually are excited about that, sounds fun to you, and it sounds like something you can do and you want to do, that is great. That is a wonderful thing because if it's a mutual agreement on it, it can be a lot of fun. But if your partner insists on his sexual fantasy that actually comes with a script that you don't feel comfortable acting out, sometimes you even disgusted about acting it out because it just doesn't feel right to you, and you communicate that to your partner, and your partner still insists on it because he says that he depends on that because that's the thing that turns him on, that is not okay. Because he's not taking responsibility of his own arousal. And the one arousal source that he's using is a fantasy, which requires for somebody else to play along. So that is definitely a recipe for disaster. And it doesn't have to be that way. Let me explain to you what our arousal sources are and how we can use them differently. We have in total 6 different arousal sources that we can use to increase our arousal, to increase our excitement, and get us ultimately up to the point of no return. And those are the 5 senses: touch, sight, smell, sound, and taste. And the 6th one the big one, is fantasy. Now, we all have access to these arousal sources as we please. Some people try them all. Some people have some favorites in there, some people go for the sound and the smell and the touch and the sight, but are not happy with the taste. But they have the other 4 senses that can make them happy and they can make them feel connected with their bodies. And some people use a single source. And if that single source is fantasy, then there is obviously something that will stand in the way of connecting with your partner. The senses, if we use our senses when we're sexual with our people, because that's what the body has given us, if we use the senses, it will bring us present, and it will teach us if we are aware of our senses, it will teach us what we like in our bodies. We can teach our lovers to touch us the way we like to be touched, and we can have a clearer picture about how we're going to manage and how we're going to be responsible for our own arousal. But if we stay in our fantasy, if the source is a fantasy and that is all that is there, then we completely depend on our partner's participation. And this is what I hear a lot in therapy. Where the woman complains because she's supposed to play a certain role and her husband insists on it because that's the only way he really can get turned on, and he makes it her problem. He makes it her responsibility for her to provide, even so she communicated that this is not what I want to do. So this is how we can get in trouble, by using the fantasy as our own arousal source, and we really cannot take responsibility that way. We're going to just push over that responsibility to our partners, and that is just not okay, especially if we insist on it and we use guilt or other matters to convince our partner that that's what they have to do. Now, I'm not saying sexual fantasies are a bad arousal source. It's just one that one has to be careful about, because it will separate you from your partner. It will not keep you present because you're following the direction of your mind. And it will also make you dependent on your partner's participation, and if they don't feel like it that day, what are you going to do? You will have to be able to use the other sources, your senses, more than you can use your arousal. Then you can use your fantasy source. I mean, you can bring it in for, half a second, half a minute, and, bring in a little fantasy and test the water. And if it doesn't sit well with your partner, then you just leave it out, and then you have your other sources to rely on. But that would mean that you're actually taking responsibility of your own arousal, and that is what needs to happen. Now, I know we have our patterns, we have our core erotic themes, and if your pattern has been that you have been for a long time depending on these fantasies, then you contact me and I will help you with them, and I will help you diversify your attention. I'll help you diversify also how you use the arousal sources and how you use your body and how you become a responsible lover for your own arousal. All of this can be learned because sex is supposed to be fun. And for that, both parties need to agree with the kind of activity that is happening. I will talk to you next week.